We continue our sermon series based upon our small group Bible study being challenged. Today, Seeking Solitude, you have a little yellow insert. You may take notes. So Seeking Solitude, that's the theme of today. If you're like me, I like great Mexican restaurants and Italian restaurants, but they have a great temptation. Now, in the Peoria area, there's a series of restaurants franchise known as Avani's. If you're ever in the Peoria, Illinois area, you need to go to those. My daughter understands. Rather inexpensive, good Italian food. But when you go there, they bring out baskets of this sweet Italian bread, and it's about 8 inches long each loaf, and there's little 2-inch slices, and it has really good butter. But the problem is, you eat so many of those that before the main dish comes out, you're already what? You ever had that? You get distracted from the main dish. Can you excuse me for a second? I want to see the point spread because Ohio State's playing in a Big Ten championship today. Just want to check that out real fast, okay? Because there's distractions. Ever been to a great Mexican restaurant, know what I'm talking about? And they bring out chips and the salsa's really good, and they do the same thing, right? You ever been there? And you just keep on eating, and especially if you're at a place where they keep on bringing out the chips, you know what I mean? Excuse me, I just want to check out my bank account. Did you guys get your stimulus checks yet? I'm not sure I've got mine yet, okay? And so there's sort of distractions. Now, so the other restaurant I think about is Texas Roadhouse. Ever been there? Because they have those great rolls too, and that sweet butter. And by the way, by the time your steak, or if you, I don't know, what's it called, roadkill, you get that, right? You're already somewhat full. Hang on a sec. I want to check out my Fitbit, how many steps away from 10,000. You guys have a Fitbit? The reality is that our lives are filled with constant, what? Distractions. We're distracted by a lot of things. We all have busy schedules. There's lots going on. Sometimes our lives are interfered with problems and hassles. But there's a lot of distractions for us, especially when it comes to faith. And our life is filled with so much going on, and so much gets called to our attention. It's filled with a lot of distractions. But the theme of this sermon series, as well as this sermon series and the small group Bible study, is what Jesus says here. Can you go ahead and read it with me? Take my yoke from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. And so Jesus says, in spite of our distractions, in spite of our busyness, that he has a yoke for us, that he blesses us and brings us into his comfort at times when we get distracted. So once again, the small group Bible study, this is a fourth in a series. We've heard about commit to community, study Scripture, prioritize prayer, and seek solitude. Why? A closer walk with Jesus. So today, once again, seeking solitude. Solitude is something that is very foreign to us all because we're all very busy. I think some ways, even this morning, just that hour has thrown us off, hasn't it you? People said that the spring ahead, we might take a week to get over because we're all really busy. We're all pulled in many different distractions. For us, solitude is different because we live in a rush-around world. My house is a little house on the prairie. My house is a little house on the freeway. Is yours? Little house on the freeway? Go here, go there, do this, do that. Being very busy with many things in life. It's sort of unique that what season are we in now with all the purple? We're in the season of what? What do we call it? Lent. But how busy we are. And the weather's been nice. Have you been doing any lawn work? Has it been fertilized? Been digging your garden at all? Have you thought about going fishing? What about cleaning your house? We tend to get very busy this time. As a matter of fact, the other time in the church here that we're called to solitude is Advent. Advent's in December, and is there a crazier month in the year than what? December is crazy. We can't do anything that month. As a matter of fact, we even cancel activities because there's so many parties, so many get-togethers, so much shopping. Solitude is very foreign to us in America. And sometimes we feel when we're not doing a ton of things, we must be lazy or something's really wrong with us. Solitude is very foreign to us. Now, you don't have to admit it, but what have you been doing since the beginning of this sermon? Have you been distracted at all? Been thinking about something else, what someone in front of you is wearing? Been thinking about what you're going to do for lunch, or maybe who's going to win the basketball game? Did I tell you Ohio State was playing a championship game? Okay, now you know, all right? Have you been distracted at all since the beginning of the service or the sermon, thinking about other things? That's rather easy to do. But our Lord calls us into solitude. Mark is a gospel that's filled with action. The Gospel of Mark is just action, action, action. In the first 35 verses, we hear about Jesus' birth, Jesus calls the disciples. He's tempted in the wilderness. He heals people. He cures people of demon possession, all before we even get to verse 35. But here's verse 35, and this is what Jesus does in spite of his busy, hectic life. Can you read it with me? Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed. In spite of Jesus' hectic life, and I'm sure he had a lot of distractions, he still took time to focus, to pray. Now, what he did is it's alone time with God. It's just not alone time with him. It's alone time with God where God communicates to him and he communicates with God. Sort of like being lost in that cross I showed the children. Jesus took time early in the morning to have time with God alone, to fellowship with God. What a blessing that was. 39 times in the gospel, in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, Jesus sought that downtime with Jesus. Just not downtime for himself. Jesus sought downtime to be with God, his Father, to pray, to share concerns, to be blessed, to have that spiritual intimacy. And so he calls us to do likewise. Now, once again, solitude is not being alone. You ever come home from work and say, I just need some downtime? Leave me alone for 15 minutes. I just need to clear my mind. Has that ever happened to you? This is not what this is about. Solitude is not being alone, but it's being with God. But it's being with God. Now Luther says this also about busyness and solitude. I got so much work to do today, I'd better spend 2 hours in prayer instead of what? That doesn't make much sense to us if we have a really busy day. Why not just get to it? But even Luther says, when I'm really busy, that's the time I need time with God, God and me, that intimacy and that union. Now, Luther's going to go in a different direction here with what he means by the word solitude. We're using solitude, time with God and I. Luther's using solitude as just time with me. He says this, just time with me, or as he uses solitude, produces melancholy when we are alone. The worst and saddest things come to mind. We reflect in details upon all sorts of evil. Friends in Christ, when we clear our minds, that's when evil comes in. When I clear my mind, I think about how people have wronged me in the past. When I clear my mind, temptations come into my mind. When I clear my mind, I think about things that make me happy. That's not what this is about. This is about intimate time between you and God, between me and God. That's what Luther's talking about is a problem of just being alone by ourselves. Read James 4:8 with me, can you? Come near to God, and he will come near to you. God, I need you to be with me now. God, be present with me now, and he will. God, I need you to hear me. I need you to spend some time with you, and he will. Whether that comes from prayer or reading the Bible or just time for God, fill me with your presence. And then the psalm says this, better is one day in your courts than thousands elsewhere. Well, where are God's courts? Well, they can be when I'm with God, but they're also here in God's house. And why is this better than 1,000 places elsewhere? Because God fills me with his presence. He comes to me in his word. He convicts me with his law. He redeems me with his gospel. The same for you. We receive his body and blood. We're reminded of our baptism. We fellowship with other believers. So better is one day here than thousands elsewhere, wherever that might be. That's what the blessing of the psalmist reminds us of. Once again, solitude is not about clearing our mind, but filling our minds with who? God. St. Paul says this, whatever is true, whatever is noble, whatever is right, whatever is trustworthy, whatever is holy, whatever is pure, set your minds on that. If you're in a bad mood, set your mind on the good things. You're angry with someone, set your mind on those things. Fill your mind with God. Whatever is true, whatever is holy, whatever is noble, whatever is trustworthy, whatever is righteous, whatever is good, whatever is pure, set your mind on that. That's something I need help with as well. Possibly you too. I want to talk about these things here, right? Our smartphones or cell phones, right? And you don't have to raise your hand if you have one. But our lives have become very different with this. When I was growing up as a kid in our house, we had one phone. Is attached in a kitchen wall, and it was the dial, you know what I mean? And very rarely did we get a phone call. Now, when my siblings and I became teenagers, the phone rang more, and there's more people on the phone. But now everybody has what? One of these. And we use it so often. I saw this Christian cartoon, and the cartoon was about new people who got to heaven, and they're all walking around like this. And they're all doing this, walking around heaven. And finally, St. Peter asked the angels, said, what's going on? The last 5-10 years, everyone who comes to heaven is walking around like this. And so St. Peter and the angels went and talked to someone else, and somebody else said, yeah, I got it figured out. On earth, they spent all their time on the phone, so they used to walk around like this, right? Somebody told me after the 8 o'clock service that they went into a place and nobody was looking up, like everybody's looking at what? Their phones, that's right. There's a book called Screenagers, not teenagers, screenagers. How much we are all focused on the screen, and I'm guilty too. There's just not this. There's our laptop, there's our TV. I'm at the gas station pumping gas. They even have a what there? A screen. I went to the Browns game a number of years ago, and they have like 100 screens all around the stadium, and went to the restroom, they even had what? I know, hoping to go to the restroom, not watching them lose, you know what I mean? Okay? But we're just filled with that, okay? Assyrian did research about phones and found this. One can't go 10 minutes without what? Now, I've been watching you closely. I haven't seen anyone on their phone. Thank you very much, okay? We can't go 10 minutes without checking their phone. Assyrian also said this. The average person 80 times a day on what? 150 times if you're a millennial or younger. How many times on the phone? What's so important about being on the phone? Because 99.99999% has nothing to do with anything, right? I mean, it's just checking out on people or whatever. 75% use their cell phone on a restroom break. I don't need to talk about that anymore, okay? All right, let's move on. And isn't it interesting, in spite of us with all the screens and fast-moving images, ADHD has what? Yeah, there's no longer attention spans. We can't focus on what people say. I'm not used to somebody talking to me in an intelligent way, so I find it boring. If you talk to me for a paragraph, I find it really hard to focus. All this has come about because of the phone. And finally, how many notifications do you get daily? I talked to someone earlier this week who said sometimes they get hundreds of notifications even a day. How do you deal with that? To be faithful with that. Last week I shared with you that there's 7 ways that people get a hold of me. I'm not complaining. You can come into my office and see me face to face. You can call the landline church. You can call my smartphone. You can text me. You can email me. You can Facebook me. And you can Facebook chat me as well. Right? All these things keep us focused on there, and these are all distractions that we have. But notice, solitude is not meditation. God did not create you to clear your mind, but for you to be a creative, mindful person and fill your minds with the right things, the holy things of God. Clear minds get filled with a lot of things, but God says, be still and know I am God. God doesn't say, be still and clear your mind. Be still and know that I'm God. Be still and know that I'm in control. Be still and know that I am there. Be still and know I am the Lord of the church. Be still and know that I am God. See, my problem, maybe your problem with solitude is I can't get enough done. I got a lot of things to do today. But solitude won't make you less productive, but make us what? More productive. Jesus is the most productive person ever. I saw this T-shirt. I've seen these memes on Facebook. And it shows all the Marvel comic people, you know what I mean? There's the Hulk, and there's the guy who shoots the arrows. What's he called? Hawkeye, there you go. And you got all those people, Superman and Batman and Tron, all those people, you know. And then Jesus is standing up and they're all sitting down, and Jesus says, let me now tell you about how I saved the world. They didn't save the world. Jesus saved the world. He's the most productive person ever. Rolled back sin, healed the sick, died and rose. Why? He had focus. He spent time in solitary with God, and that called him to be focused. Focus equals productivity. Alone time with God and I get focused, and focused I am productive. Abraham Lincoln, now my daughter's here. We lived in Central Illinois, and we lived in the same congressional district that Abraham Lincoln served. Central Illinois, same one that he served, right? And Abraham Lincoln was a rail splitter, okay? And so there's a high school, and she played against them in volleyball in a tournament there. They're called the Lincoln Rail Splitters. Don't you get it? Lincoln Rail Splitters, okay? Somebody asked Abraham Lincoln how long it'd take him to chop down a tree. Now, Abraham Lincoln's like a 6'4", strapping guy. He was really strong. He goes, it takes 6 hours. 1 hour to sharpen my axe and 5 to chop it down. Get it? First came the focus, and then came what? Yeah, the productivity. Catch that? I want to talk about the workplace and what happens when we're not focused, okay? So distraction means being drawn away. Distraction, traction, loss of traction. Career Builder said this about distractions. 75% of employers say 1 or 2 hours a day lost on distractions. So if you work 8 hours a day, that means 25% of the workday is gone. How much is the employer losing? Now, employees are a bit more honest. This is what they said. 43% of employees said, 3 to 4 hours a day are lost due to what? Distractions. Now, Martin Luther puts a cap on that. He says the greatest theft is that which is not, the greatest theft is not that which is under box and key. Now, we in America, if someone steals a candy bar or someone rips off a $10 bill, what Luther calls is sneaky thieves, we throw them in jail. But you know who the greatest thieves are? I think you're getting there. The greatest thief and the most money lost in America and around the world in the billions is a person who goes to work and doesn't what? Say it again. A person who goes to work and doesn't what? Work. No solitude, there's not time to focus, there's a loss of productivity. But God calls us to be productive, okay? By God's grace, word and sacrament, Jesus died and rose for us. He brings his blessings. We're connected to God and ultimately bear fruit. Focused people do great things. They're great workers. They're great bosses. They help touch people in their workplace. They live out their vocation, whether as parents or spouses or children or whoever. They do great things and blessings, loving neighbors and loving God. Be productive. So much, Jesus says this. Can you read it with me about being solitude and productive? Go ahead. Remain in me, and I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine, and you are the branches. If you remain in me, and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. What a blessing that is. So how about this for a closing thought? Notice nothing is typed out. How about if we close our eyes, bow our head, and spend a minute in solitude with God? Let's do that. And all God's people say,